Schools right across Canada are struggling with a shortage of teachers. Quebec started off this school year with more than 8,500 vacancies, while BC more than tripled the number of uncertified staff it hired from the Racine back in 2019. Joining me with more this morning is Natalie Reid. She's an education researcher at the University of Regina. Good morning.
Good morning.
So you're in Saskatchewan, but listen, right across the country, every province is struggling with vacancies in school. Where are all the teachers?
Well, it's a big question, but really, if we think about it, it's kind of a confluence of a lot of issues that actually predated the pandemic. So before the pandemic, we were already seeing the word crisis being thrown around. And while different provinces report and different territories report their numbers differently, the kind of average accepted rate of teacher attrition in the first 5 years in Canada was 30 to 50% pre-pandemic. What kind of happened was that a lot of faculties of education reduced their numbers of seats. There was fewer educational assistants in schools, which led to, increased tensions and increased violence. And so all of this was coming together pre-pandemic. Then the pandemic hits, and we saw some very interesting things. So among some of the variables, some teachers were really concerned with being vectors of transmission from school to home, or if they were, responsible for elder care or anything like that. And so there was a group of teachers who chose to leave the profession. Those who were close to retirement, many chose early retirement. It was the risk factors were just too high, and they were close in that they chose that. Then typically what would happen if the pandemic hadn't been on was that newly retired teachers, many return to substitute teach or to supply teach. And, we didn't see that because newly retired and retired teachers didn't want to go into classrooms where the teacher was away because of COVID. So when we think about all of those things coming together, it created sort of this confluence of variables. And so the Canadian Teachers Federation did a mental health check-in, actually two of them, both in 20 and 2021. And they found that 70% of teachers were feeling very stressed and were worried about their own mental health and well-being in addition to their own health. So if we think about the impact of that over the long term, it has led to a profession that seems maybe more volatile, possibly less desirable to get into. And so we hear the words, particularly in the Canadian context, of a recruitment and retention crisis for all of these reasons kind of mixed together.
And this is then how we end up with the vacancies. I find it interesting that the turnover rate among new teachers is 30%. I thought that was quite high. And you've pointed out that it's not always a clean trade. So when you have somebody who's got experience leave the system, you bring in somebody new, you're losing that level of experience. I'm a parent. I have 3 kids in the school system right now. How are classrooms being affected by this?
Significantly, actually. I don't think we can underestimate, as you beautifully said in the intro, this is a pan-Canadian issue. And so we're hearing reports from across the country where, in the classrooms or in schools, because there aren't enough responsible adults, teachers who are there are being called on to take on other classes. So you may have a teacher who's now supervising 2 or 3 classes in their room or in the gym because there's not enough space. Student learning is being impacted because often you have people coming into these classrooms who aren't qualified to teach that particular grade level, or possibly, like we're seeing across the country, are uncertified or not qualified to teach at all. And so they're doing sort of stopgap activities like crossword puzzles and things like that. So student learning is really being affected. The dynamic of the school is also being quite affected because in a lot of places, what's happening is educational assistants or administrators or the special learning advisors are being called in to cover classes that otherwise would be covered by teachers or supplied teachers, but they just aren't there. And so this has a dramatic impact on learning, but also on the environment in a school setting.
Natalie, we're going to have to bring you back to talk about solutions and what needs to change and how fast it needs to happen. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.